Right. Aberystwyth. And Keith Morris, photographer.
Hello.
You're one of the busiest photographers that I know. What's the driving force?
Driving force. You could say money, the need to actually make money from photography, because it's the only source of income I have. I mean, I haven't got a part-time job. I'm not a teacher. I haven't got a pension. I'm not a sort of retired civil servant or whatever. This is all I do. I have to make money from photography. And one of the ways that I found of remaining current and remaining employed is to keep on doing things. Not necessarily always being paid to do those things, but doing things anyway. So that your profile remains high. And the more you do, the more I find people ask you to do. It becomes a virtuous spiral of activity. And also, the more you do, and the more different things you do, and the more things you do that you haven't done before, the more skills you acquire, the more competence you acquire, the more confidence you acquire as well. All these things then feed into your ability to do the jobs that you are commissioned to do. And I'm not a trained photographer. I have no education in photography at all. So I'm doing this partly also to carry on learning about photography. If I didn't do this extra work, this new work, this different work, then I'd stagnate.
And you work within what some people would call a very small area.
I work within what in Welsh would be called a village square, the square mile, deliberately. I don't travel. I have travelled. I've travelled extensively. I lived in California for a while. But I haven't now travelled abroad since 1987 when I had a weekend in Florence. I very rarely go out of Wales. I think I've been outside of Wales probably half a dozen times, 10 times in the last decade. I don't go out of Ceredigion very much unless I'm being paid to go out of Ceredigion. And I'm happier and happiest in Aberystwyth. If I can walk or cycle to the place that I'm working, then I'm all the happier. So I have a very local palette, but I'm finding that the work I do, which is non-commissioned work, self-generated work, which I then place with agencies, finds an international market. You don't have to be in New York or Barcelona or London to be selling pictures that a buyer in New York or Barcelona or London can use.
Are you a hunter photographer?
A bit of both. I mean, I both go out on the prowl, as it were. Big game photographer, big camera, sometimes small camera, often, sometimes, whatever is appropriate, looking for pictures. I never go out of the house without a camera. Even if I'm going to buy a pint of milk or a litre of milk these days, I will have a small camera with me. I'll have a small Fuji camera with me. Because you never know what you will see. So I work in that kind of hunter-gatherer way, but I also do work more and more now in devising and setting up and creating photo ideas.
That's an interesting aspect, because I think, and it's one of the aspects of your work I find fascinating, because I know you enjoy theatre and you do theatre work. Yeah. What do you find attractive about that? What are the elements that make? Well,
I mean, let's go back to the very beginning. Right. Although I'm not a trained photographer, I did spend a lot of time working in theatre as a lighting designer. Okay, right. I was a founder member of the National Youth Theatre of Wales in 1976. I was there from 76 to 79 in Cardiff, designing the lights for their shows. And I was just taking photographs in a purely amateur way, as one did at that time, with no intention of ever making a living out of photography. I had no desire to become a photographer. I was trained to become an urban planner. That didn't happen. But I enjoy theatre. I enjoy the interaction of light in space, which is basically what photography is about. Yeah, light, space, people.
Yes.
Those are the three elements that I work with anyway. Yeah. So I've had that inclination right from the very beginning of how light and lighting occupies a vacuum. And my first ever commission came when some friends of mine who were actor members of the National Youth Theatre of Wales decided to put on a show at the National Eisteddfod in Machynlleth, which was either 1980 or 1981. I can't remember which one it was. And they offered to pay me £70 out of the profits of the show if I'd photograph that. Yeah. Out of the profits of the show. Yes. Yes. One of the great lies of commissioning. They never made any money, so therefore I never made any money. But that was the light bulb going on in the head moment for me. The idea that people would pay you for doing something that you really enjoy doing anyway. That in a sense you would do anyway, even without being paid at all. So the fact that, being paid for that, for being creative, rather than being paid as compensation for being in an office or a factory or a warehouse for 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, X number of weeks a year. After that, so that was 1980, 1981. Then in 1981-82, there was a community arts centre venture started in Aberystwyth, where a number of former drama students who had been in the university drama department in an old ramshackle building across the road from my house. The drama department moved out to new premises, and they then approached the council saying, can we remain in the building for 6 months to rehearse various shows on a temporary basis? The council said yes, and around those 4 companies, which were Brith Gorf, Cwmni Cyfri Tri, who are now Arad Goch, yes, and 2 English language student companies, coalesced about 100 different artists and various makers and creators. And we were all in the same position of being very young. We were 21, 22. We had no commitments. We had no mortgages, no families. We could live off fresh air, baked beans, pints of beer and fags. That's how long ago it was. So it was a great nursery for us all. And it meant that we kind of fed in and off each other, because a theatre company would want pictures for a show. A photographer would need people to pose for ideas that they were making. There would be writers. Peter Lord, the art historian, started there. Yeah. Any number of people who are now professionally working in the arts in Wales, especially the Welsh language arts in Wales, started off in the Barn Centre. So that's how I got a sense of my lucky break, was to be able to get, having had this kind of light bulb moment in 1980-81, to have a space then to do stuff in 1982. So
you were in the right place at the right
time?
Right place,
right time. Pure luck. I mean, I had applied to go and do a PhD in geography at the University of Leeds, into the economics of second homes in rural North Yorkshire. That didn't happen. I had the place, but not the money. So I was just pure luck. I mean, I happened to be in the right place at the right time with the right kind of intentions, right group of people, and it suddenly all kind of came together. That's why I am here now talking to you. If it hadn't been for those 2 particular episodes, then I would now be a planner in some urban planning department.
But isn't that interesting, though, that your geographical background, or your interest in planning and all that sort of thing about square mile and working with...
Oh yeah, I mean, I don't think anything you do in life is at all wasted, whatever it is. And I certainly don't think anything you do educationally is wasted. I happen to believe that you don't need to be educated in photography to be a photographer. I happen to believe, actually, that it's better not to be educated in photography to be a photographer, to have something else that you actually know about. that if you, because I bring to my photography all this information about economics and sociology and geography and planning and environmental concerns and everything that is kind of feeding through into how I work in both my kind of reportage, editorial work, and also my personal stuff. I do find a lot of photography produced by art school, university trained photographers to be incredibly dull and incredibly pointless and inward looking and self-referential or referring to other photographers. I think, well, why? I mean, what is point? What is point that? I mean, I much prefer the sort of photography which actually engages with an audience, which actually engages with their interests and concerns and worries and anxieties and passions.
Yeah, so in that context, since we're talking about the education aspect of photography and I think we are all in this room are quite agreed with the lack that the education is wrong as far as photography is concerned. Would you, as a photographer, would you mentor a young photographer? A young photographer came to you with his portfolio and said, "Keith, help me."
Yeah, I mean, I do that. I do mentoring on an informal basis, and I get asked to do work experience a lot. I turn them down because my pattern of work is just so erratic that I can't offer a really useful work experience to a person without me having to spend more time training them than it's worth. Yeah, I mean, I've done it in the past, and I'm exhausted after a week of work experience because I have to devise a kind of curriculum for that week for them. It's not just them kind of shadowing me, because that would be pointless. I used to be sitting around drinking tea for a lot of the week, or on the computer. I mean, you know, valid work for a photographer to do, but incredibly boring as a work experience. Yes. So I try, when I have had a work experience, I actually make projects up for them, to give them an idea of what it's like to be me when I'm working. Yeah. Because very often, you know, I'm not doing anything that particular week that is actually relevant to a work experience's needs. So I no longer do it because I find it far too draining to do. If I was a studio photographer with a kind of regular flow of work, or if I was a news photographer full time with kind of commissions to do every day. Say I was working for the Cambrian News, and they have a local photographer who goes and does the grip and grins and pointing at paving stones and that kind of stuff, and the kiddies in their costumes. Fine, because you know exactly what you're doing from one day to the next. I've got no idea what I'm doing from one day to the next. So it's unfair to give me a work experience person because I can't give them enough experience.
So if you're not exactly like I am, I don't really know what I'm doing from one day to the next. I have some commissions that you work for, and there are books, and you're in exactly the same boat. How do you deal with that not knowing? Because it become for some people it would be too stressful.
Yeah, I did a careers convention at a local school here last week, and that was the first thing I said to people. If you want to be a photographer, you have to be able to cope with the fact that there actually are no jobs in photography. There are opportunities in photography, but there are no jobs anymore. The only jobs in photography are working for the police force, hospitals, the army, and that's it, really. An occasional big institution will have their own in-house photographer, but anything else, it's all done freelance. And if you can't hack the uncertainty of not knowing from one day to the next, 1 week to the next, 1 month to the next, what's going to be in your bank account at the end of that month, don't do it. Take pictures, train to be a dentist, earn far more money, and be photography as a part-time. I was looking at some figures for what the average income is for a photographer. It's like £24,000 a year. Reading in the paper last week, the average income for a plumber is £36,000 a year. So if I was just purely in it for the money, I'd be a plumber, I think, rather than a photographer. Actually, I'm making more than the average income for a photographer. Touch wood, he says, banging the table. But as a career advisor, I couldn't possibly say to a person, go and become a photographer, because that would be meaning that I'm going to they're going to be in poverty for most of their lives, unless they're lucky. If you get lucky, or if you're fantastically talented, But even talent is not enough these days. You have to be able to sell yourself. It's that marketing part of it. So what's the question again? I've got off on a tangent now. And
No. I'm enjoying the conversation because it's very enlightening. Because you have you've decided that, and you do a lot of stock photography.
Yes.
And so stock photography becomes, in a way, your stock income then?
Yeah, I mean, okay. I'm very lucky in that I came to stock photography. I started very early. I started with Photo Library Wales, Steve Bembo's organisation down in Cardiff.
Indeed.
I think Steve approached me, crikey, 30 years ago to submit stuff to them. And I have been doing, they've got my images still. And I get a small amount of money every quarter from Photo Library Wales, not very much these days. So I've had a long experience with stock photography. Also got a long experience working for newspapers and magazines, so I kind of know what an editorial picture is about.
Yeah.
Right? So when an agency like, for instance, Alamy, who I supply a lot of images to, started, and I started sending stuff to them, I was ahead of the game in terms of knowing what pictures were likely to be bought by a client.
And presumably you had a lot of stock.
I had a lot. I mean, when I started, my first year with Alamy, I was just raiding my back catalogue and uploading as much stuff as I possibly could. Now I'm kind of working as I go along, uploading more and more. I've got something like 30,000 images with Alamy, a few thousand with a library in Barcelona called Arge, AGE photo stock. I have a couple of thousand with Photo Fusion in Brixton, and a few other smaller libraries around. I got some with Getty even, though not very much. I need to look at that more, in fact. So the 30,000 images I have with Alamy generate an income of between £1,000 and £2,000 a month for me. 1,000 in an average month, 2,000 on a good month. So that takes a sting out of things quite considerably. And I've managed to actually pay off any mortgage. I have no mortgages anymore. I have no debts. So I'm actually in a very, at the moment, quite a comfortable position income-wise. So with the income stream that I get from stock photography, plus an income stream I get from commissioned work, and an income stream I get from private work, individuals approaching me for portraits or to buy prints. And then I have an income stream which comes from weddings. I do weddings as well. And I have a fifth income stream which is about either broadcasting. I do radio reviews and commentary. I do a television judging of photography competitions, and I do workshops. So I've got 5 separate but interrelated streams of income. So hopefully, if one starts to wobble, then another one will.
Yes,
will
because
pick up.
Because photo stock is even Alamy is sort of squeezed. It's
All agencies are being the agencies are both being squeezed and being oversupplied.
Right.
I mean, when I was starting in stock, everything was on 35mm slides or 6x7 slides, and there were relatively few photographers. There weren't that many of us sending stuff in to agencies. Nowadays, every man, woman, dog, and cat has got a camera which can do 36 megapixel whatever images, and they're sending stuff in. So there's a surfeit of images for so many types of activity, location, and place. So it's much harder now to get your images seen in a gallery, in a library, and B, get anything like a decent return on those images from a library. Still possible, but I kind of think now that if one was starting off selling stuff or wanting to sell stuff through an agency like Alamy, you've probably missed the boat. You're probably too late by 5 years. So
really, what in effect you're selling any up and coming photographer diversified.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You either. In a sense, I'm forced to diversify by being in Aberystwyth.
Yes.
Because I can't be a full-time news photographer here because there ain't that much news happening. It comes in bursts, sometimes a heck of a lot of it, but then nothing. So I can't be a news photographer. I can't be a theatre photographer full-time. I can't be a wedding photographer full-time. There's not enough of one particular type of work to justify or to sustain you in just that activity. So needs must, I have to diversify.
So will you devise, I mean, you don't have to answer this question, but would you diversify into video? Because video seems
yeah, I mean, it's something that I am looking into. My cameras now can do it. Until I bought the latest generation of Nikon cameras, there was no video capability on the cameras, on the bodies that I had. Now I have. I've done a small amount of video work just as a camera person for other people's ideas, which I've enjoyed. The one thing which keeps me back from video is the bloody post-production. It just takes forever to edit a video. Whereas with stills, I can go out, bish, bosh, bosh, I'm done. I'm on to the next job. I'm impatient. I haven't got the ability to sit down and spend like 3 days editing a video. It would drive me nuts. So I'm looking to actually do video, but in collaboration with an editor. Right. Yeah, okay. A person who actually enjoys that process. Because there are people out there who do that, who they are editors and they just love editing. Right? I hate it. I love shooting the stuff. I hate editing the stuff. So if you find somebody who loves it, they want to do it, and also they are much better at doing it than I would ever be. So it's a win-win. If I can get that kind of person or people together, then yeah, I will do more and more video. And also there is a market and for short, like 10, 15 second clips, unedited, just like, windmills, waves crashing, time-lapse sunset, traffic moving, these sort of little things. They're the video equivalent of, they're kind of little generic website filler images. They're kind of the mood images, Yes, and there's a market for that, and that's the kind of thing which I'd probably get into as a sort of temporary, as initial step in the video thing. Yeah. Stuff which I can do, and it's not edited. It's just to shoot 15-second clips, and that's it. Yeah. I've got the kit. I mean, I've got video heads. I've got the lenses. Lovely stuff.
But I mean, I know from experience and talking to other photographers down in Cardiff. I mean, for example, a Western Mail photographer now has to go out. He has to shoot.
Oh yeah, I do that. I mean, I do a fair amount of work for Western Mail, and they always say squiz us. They say squiz us 10 seconds of video. Yes. Yeah, fine. Or they say we want to do a little video interview. Yes. I do it on my iPhone. Because it's only going to end up on the website. Yeah. And I do it on my iPhone. iPhone 6 video and sound quality is pretty good indoors anyway. Yeah. So I've done little headshot interviews on an iPhone, and somebody email that. Job done. Yeah. So yeah, To answer your previous question, yes, I do video. Yes, I remember now. I do a lot of it. Yeah, just not very much on my SLRs. I do it on my phone. Yes. And the camera phones these days. Certainly for web use, which is where a lot of images end up anyway, rather than in print these days, is more than adequate. And even the camera phone image is good enough for news print if it's the only shot you have. Yeah. Very often when I'm shooting a news story, I get asked, send us something now. So we want something now, so we can just hold the story up. Until you get the better pictures through. So in which case, a camera phone shot will do it. Or what I have got now, I've got a little Wi-Fi dongle which slots into my Nikon, and I can now send full high-res images from my Nikon via that dongle and my phone straight away.
So are you sending JPEGs then?
Oh yeah, sending JPEG. Yeah, I mean, I've been doing jobs where I'm actually wiring stuff from the location as I'm going along, and stuff is up and running on a newspaper website before I get home. Because when you're working in news, particularly for instance soft news like weather news, the papers love a weather story. But with weather stories, you're competing not just with guys in the same location as you, which is around a lot, but you're competing with guys all over the UK, right? And so you've got to get that stuff in quick, Because if you're second, you're nowhere. If
you've put yourself in dangerous positions.
I have done, yeah. I'm putting myself in fewer dangerous positions now than I used to.
Did it scare the pants off you, the wave?
I didn't see it, so I didn't know. It scared me later, having seen the video of the wave that got me, how bloody big it was. The story is, because, in 2013, 2014, November 2013 to February 2014, Aberystwyth the whole UK got hit by just storm after storm after storm after storm after storm after storm after storm. A sequence of Atlantic storms came rolling in. Every 2 or 3 days we got a storm, and it just got relentless battering. And we were the poster boy. Aber was the poster boy for that storm, those storms for ages. So I was out one night photographing people's reactions to the storms. So it meant I had my back to the waves. Mistake. Don't ever stand with your back to the waves. So they come in, and the waves both come down on top of you and kind of come in horizontally behind you. And I don't know if you play rugby at all. If you tap somebody behind their knees, they come over. They just fall over, basically. Bang, and they're down. So I got hit behind the knees by this wave, and I was flat on my back. And then, 83 tons of water come hurtling down, water and stones and seaweed and all sorts of shit like that. And I'm lying there on the floor, under 2 foot of water, with a camera in my hand. And bless them, Nikon cameras are weather sealed, right? But they're not waterproof. And digital camera is a computer. It's a very sophisticated piece of electronics. And computers do not like to be in salt water at all. Anyway, I said, and just died on me. And there's nothing deader than a dead digital camera. No. Yeah. But I got up, I went home, I got changed, I picked up another camera, I went back out again. Because when you're working covering news, you can't say, "Oh, I lost my camera, I can't do the job anymore." You've got to have backup. So I went back out and did it again. I didn't get total this time, but I went out and did the same thing again. And that's one of the reasons why I never sell any of my equipment. I buy new stuff, but I keep the old stuff. Because the old stuff for me is much more useful as backup than the few quid I'd get from selling it. Because one thing you don't want to do if you're in the market for a camera is buy it from a professional. Because we just fuck them up so badly, Buy a camera from a nice little old dentist who only uses it, to photograph flowers.
Yeah, I was out on a shoot with the British Army up in Brecon Beacons, and it was all about corgi socks, bizarrely. But anyway, I went out on a live shooting range with them, and we had to cross different bits of terrain, and there was a stream, and the guy just jumped it, and I thought, I won't be able to jump this with my camera. So I literally, because everything was moving, I threw my camera to him. I literally threw, and he caught it. And thankfully, everything was all right. But it was better than dunking it in the water. And you take risks with your...
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And sometimes they pay off and sometimes they don't. No. Hopefully. Most of the times they do pay off. I don't trash a camera every time I go out. I am not that mad. I'm crazy, but I'm not bonkers. But yeah, so that's what I do. So, what was the question again? Sorry, I go off on tangents. I apologise.
Don't worry about it at all. I mean, from talking from a Welsh perspective, right, and Welsh photographers, do you think that Welsh photographers and the image in Wales gets less hype maybe than other aspects of our creativeness as a nation? I mean, people who write poetry get lots of coverage. People who play rugby get lots of coverage. If you're a singer, you get lots of coverage. But if you're making art with photographs,
you see, I don't know because I don't. I'm pretty good at getting coverage for myself. You see, I've not particularly noticed a lack of coverage for what I do. and I don't particularly pay attention to what other photographers do. Yeah, I'm incredibly myopic in that sense. Also, I don't watch television, and I don't read very many magazines and stuff like that. So I have no idea. And to answer your question, EMYR, I haven't got a fucking clue, basically. But there is possibly a kind of tendency to privilege the written and spoken word in Welsh over the visual arts. Yes. Less so now than, say, 20 or 30 years ago. Things have changed. I mean, there are a lot of visual artists in Wales, and I don't think they're suffering massively from underexposure. Yeah, but I do think that possibly photography is still, kind of one of the lesser arts. I'm uncomfortable with the term artist when it comes to me, right? Because I don't think of myself as I'm a photographer. I just do stuff. I do photographs. I do photography. There are artist photographers who are very deliberately working in the fine arts context. I'm not one of them. So I don't know enough about art photography to have any kind of real kind of opinion.
Yeah, but
when
if you're doing your personal stuff, because your personal stuff, what sort of personal stuff do you do?
What?
I don't think I've ever seen any of your personal stuff, really.
See, all the kind of personal stuff, aka self-motivated projects or self-generated projects, always have, at least in my mind, a kind of commercial end point.
Right, okay.
Yeah, or commercial intent. For instance, I have a closed Facebook group for models and makeup artists and assistants that I use to put together teams to work on projects that I have. Because there are any number of people who approach me saying, like, can we work together? Can you photograph me? So I say, yeah, can we join my group and we you can keep an eye on what I'm putting out as calls for assistance. So I have these ideas for images that I want to make. One thing I did 2 or 3 weeks ago is using the location that I'd known of for about 15 years, which is an abandoned road between Dolgellau and Bala. Mm-hmm. Which, have you ever driven that road at all? Yes. Have you ever driven it did you drive it in the 70s and 80s and 90s?
I think I probably did my Morris 1000 when I was travelling back and forth to North Wales.
Okay, well, on that road, for about 15 years, there were temporary traffic lights on a kind of bend, because the road was slipping away.
Yes,
yeah, right?
I know you're right.
Yeah. Those are the longest lasting temporary traffic lights ever. Yeah, they were just there for decades, it seemed, right? But eventually, that part of the road got bypassed. They built a new bit of road, literally the other side of the river from that. But unlike what they do now, where when you build a bypass or you bypass a road, you then dig up the old road and it returns to nature. They just left it. They just left this bit of road there. So it has all the road markings, it has the road barriers and everything. It's an abandoned road. I thought, brilliant, I've got to do some pictures here. Kind of post-apocalyptic, end of the world, scenario pictures. It's been bubbling away in my head for ages. And I finally did that with a model and an assistant about 3 weeks ago. Okay, so that's a self-generated project, personal work. But those pictures will go out to Getty and a couple of other agencies, because they will work as book covers. They will work as magazine covers. They will work in issues about abandonment, issues about schizophrenia, for instance. A woman alone in the abandoned, nightmarish world. Right? So I'm trying to make images which are both kind of visually attractive, but also have some sort of commercial use.
So what's the percentage in your head of the personal and thinking, this has commercial value and it's going into the locker room where it will be used?
It all goes. I don't ever do a project and the pictures don't
right.
end up
Okay,
somewhere.
okay.
So it's always there.
Right, okay.
It's always there. I mean, there's always everything that I do. There will be. I will try and monetize that. You have to. Otherwise, it's just self-indulgent wank, basically. Yeah. And then there's a lot of that around.
Of course there
right?
is, yes.
So I try to. I mean, I make these projects interesting, both for me and for the people that I'm working with. Also, I mean, because I'm not paying them. Yeah. These are people who are giving up their time to because they want to work with me, which is very flattering, lovely. So I want to make sure that they get something out of it, which is good for their portfolios.
Yes.
And I get images which I think, I hope, I expect I can sell. I got no guarantees they will. I mean, they may not sell at all, ever. But I don't think, looking back on it, I don't think I've ever done a project like that and not sold something.
Will you reach a time in your life where you will think, well, I'm comfortable, I'm happy?
No. I'm happy, yeah. I'm happy.
No, but are you? Do you think you'll be driven in the way that you are now? You're obviously driven, but will you always be as driven as you are now?
I hope so.
Until your dying day.
I bloody hope so. Yeah, because I can't imagine not doing this stuff. I mean, what on earth would I do if I didn't do this? I have no other desire at all to do anything else other than just carry on making photographs. Whether those photographs are of, like on Monday, a new office, fine. Or whether they're like 2 weeks ago, an abandoned road, or I'll be doing something else. Next Saturday, I've got 9 pre-teen kids as superheroes. Right? They're going to be dressing up in old motorbike helmets and goggles and towels and T-shirts and stuff like that, pretending to be superheroes. Brilliant. Because that's going to go to an agency, because it'll be pictures about childhood, innocence, development, ambition, right, etc.
So you mentioned all those words. So tag words within your and keywords within your commercial world are vitally important.
I would never start a project without knowing what my outcomes should be, what my keyword outcomes should be. Okay, I know, I have a kind of this, there will be this core of concepts that I'm working around. I mean, stuff will accrete around that core during the shoot, during the project, and it may go off on a different tangent, but I will get that core out of it. If you haven't got that core there, if I haven't got those core concepts, those ideas, those keywords there, then what the fuck am I doing? Why am I doing it? It's pointless. Yes. You've got to have, and also if you have that core set of concepts there, you can actually then sell that to your collaborators. Do
you enjoy the manipulation of setup? Because you have an idea in your head. And so you have a specific idea. You've obviously worked out what you want to do with that idea. Do you enjoy that?
Oh yeah, immensely. I mean, I'm enjoying the aspect of being kind of. It's more being a director of photography than a photographer. Yeah. I am actually directing this scene. There's an American photographer called Gregory Crewdson. Who does incredible suburban nightmarish scene, huge setups with crews of 150 people, and so I'm doing that, but with a budget of nothing and with 3 people.
Would you like to do the stuff he does?
No, I mean I know I don't want to get involved with that size of crew. I like working with a small bunch of people, limited budget. And just making things which are fantastic. Yeah, so I do really enjoy the process of image making. Yeah, that's because there's image making and there's image grabbing, and I do both. Yes. Yeah, but I get the most satisfaction probably from the image making.
A crucial point there, really. And so, how much energy and time do you then spend with post-production?
As little as possible.
Right. Okay.
Really, really, really small. Yeah. Very, very little time. Because I'm on to the next project. Yeah. So I'm trying to get everything pretty much done in camera. Yeah. A little bit of post-production in Lightroom maybe, but certainly not to the extent that some people do, spending like days. Again, getting back to my video editing, I haven't got time. I have all the patience to spend days editing one image to kind of, make it absolutely pristine. If I can get it to be, not so much good enough, but good as I imagined it to be, then I'm happy with that. That may change. That's one aspect which may change. I may spend more time working on individual images that I've made. But I'm not sure about that. But I really do enjoy the process of putting together a concept, of getting the team together, of making the images,
which goes back to your early theatrical.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so it's one big circle. Yes. One big circle. Yes. So there's like I said earlier on, there's no aspect of anybody's life that's ever wasted. You have to be drawing upon all the experiences you've ever had, personally, psychologically, professionally, educationally, and then pull that all together to inform the work that you make and develop your own particular style of working, so that you have some sort of imprint on the images that you're making.
Where do you get all your energy from?
Big mugs of coffee is one thing. I swim every day. I swim every morning from 8 o'clock. I swim a mile every morning. I have done since 1980. I quit smoking on my 50th birthday, and I'm nearly 58 now. I quit drinking 4 years ago, so that helps. But my energy comes from my passion for making the work. I find when people ask me that, I'm kind of taken aback, because I just assume all photographers have this passion for the work that they do.
Oh, I think I wasn't. I think all photographers do have a passion for the work that they do, and they just work in different ways. What I'm intrigued about is your energy, because your energy is boundless. It seems to me.
That's very kind. I don't know how to answer that question, because I don't know what it's like not to have that energy. I can't step outside myself and look.
No. Well, have you always been the same?
Yes.
About whatever role you've undertaken in life, is that as that energy?
I've only ever been a photographer.
You've only ever been a photographer.
Yeah. Apart from this brief dalliance with lighting, and a brief dalliance with being an urban planner, which kind of came to an end very quickly, I've only ever been a photographer. It's all I've ever done.
How did you? I guess you weren't bothered with a change from film to digital. It didn't.
No, I mean, I remember when I made that change. It was the time when the Nikon D100 camera had come out, and that was the first camera. Because there'd been a Nikon digital camera, and it was like sort of £18,000 or something stupid. Yes. Yeah, for a half a megabyte image, and it was it was being used. It was being used by some sports photographers and agencies. But then the D100 came out, and it was like just over £1,000, and this was 15 years.
15 years, about 15 years ago. Yeah,
still a lot of money, but not silly money. It was affordable money. And suddenly you could actually buy a digital camera for a price that was kind of within my budget, and which had a quality which was pretty good for the time. Certainly good enough that a client would use it. So I bought my first D100 thinking, I'll do half and half. I'll do half digital, half film.
Oh, you didn't take the whole plunge.
Well, that didn't bloody happen, did it? I bought since buying that first D100, I've shot 2 rolls of film. Right? Literally 2 rolls of film. One was some roll of colour film, because somebody needed to have slides of some ceramics, And the second was about 6 months ago. I shot a roll of black and white 120 film to check that my old Hasselblad super wide camera still worked. Those are the only 2 rolls of film I've shot in 15 years. It's been all digital since then. Everything.
Do you do any black and white stuff now?
Yeah, I do. I do a certain amount. Yes, I do. Digital, of course. Yeah. I was at the Hay Festival this May, working on spec for an agency in Edinburgh called Writer Pictures. Yes. So I did a series of portraits of writers at there, and I outputted them as black and white for my own website. They've gone as colour to the agency, but I kind of liked, and I although I shot them on the Nikons, I cropped them square so they looked like old Hasselblads. I do like the square format a lot.
Yeah, why is that so attractive? Because
I just find the square format is a nice kind of neutral format. Yeah. With the 35mm format, you're being either led horizontally or led vertically. Yes. With square, that's it. It's just square. It's just that. So it's kind of it's a neutral space. So I did that. I mean, I enjoyed doing that, and I was with the Hay Festival pictures. What I find from my experience works the best commercially, in terms of being able to sell images, are not shots of people speaking on stage doing their presentations. God, they have these terrible bloody microphones gummed around their lips. But what works better for me is if you can drag them out of after they've spoken or before they've spoken, then place them against a neutral white background, which is quite a lot at the Hay Festival, and then just get quite tight head and shoulders. So
how much time were you spending with them, or was it like, I've got to get these shots and I was literally...
How much time?
Yes.
Most 2 minutes per person, at most.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah.
Often it's seconds,
Yes.
You'll find, actually, that you get the most time with the younger writers because they are flattered to be asked to be photographed because they don't ever have this before. And they're the ones, also they're the ones which have the most commercial potential because they may go on to bigger and better things. And also, there are fewer images of them around. Yeah, the world does not need another picture of Stephen Fry.
No.
There are zillions of pictures of Stephen Fry. Yeah. And also, he won't stand for you. He won't stand for a picture because he's got agents who deal with his image rights. All right? Cool. Whereas, Josephine Smith, the young, up-and-coming young adult writer, maybe there's no picture of her at all. Yeah? And she's dead happy to be photographed. Right. Yeah, so great. Brilliant. And also, what was nice about working with Writer Pictures, the agency, is that they kind of gave me heads up as to who they thought would be good to get. Because when you got the Hay Festival, there's so much stuff going on there, you can't cover everything.
No.
Yeah? So you have to, and I know bugger all about literature or writers. You could hit me over the head with a bestseller novel and I wouldn't know the first thing about it. So I need to have some sort of guidance from them as to who to go after. Right? So they provided me with a daily list of people that they thought were good to get, either because they thought they were going to be winning some prizes, or they had no pictures of them in their own library, or the pictures they had were very old. So I was able to I had a series of gradings. 2 stars meant must get. Yeah, 1 star meant get if you can, and then the rest would kind of if they're around and you're not doing anything else, snap them. Yeah. I was good because I got all my 2 stars. I'm really happy about that. So that was good. That was good to work with.
Do you like it when clients give you open-ended? I mean, I know you work for the Eisteddfod, for example, and you have an open-ended brief.
Yes, yeah. It's just
how do you cope with an open-ended brief?
Very well. But
how do you approach it as a
more often than not these days, an open-ended brief comes with a style guide. They will send you a style guide, not so much of what particular pictures we want, but that this is the style of picture we want. This is the kind of feel that we want. And the feel these days, if you work for Steddfod, even for the job I'm doing on Monday for the National Farmers Union, they've sent me a style guide for that. And if I work for Welsh Government, what they want now is pictures which look genuine. Pictures which look as if they've not been set up. Pictures which look as though they've not actually been done professionally. Pictures with a kind of Instagrammy kind of look, very kind of light, lots of lens flare, lots of very shallow depth of field, very kind of fresh looking. So I have a style guide like that for most of these open-ended commissions. So I'm not working entirely in the dark. Yeah. I do kind of know what I'm doing, and also I have the kit that will enable me to do that. A lot of that kind of imagery depends on using very fast lenses, shallow depth of field. Yeah. So you need to have your f1.4 lenses coming out, right? And I've got the quartet of f1.4 lenses. I've got the 35 1.4, the 50 1.4. The 85 1.4 and the 24 1.4. And I've got, they only make 4 f1.4 lenses, and I've got the lot. So I can do that kind of style of image easily, because you can't make that work in post production. You can't shoot that with a 2.8 lens and make it work a 1.4 lens. You can't do it. Yeah, but with a 1.4 lens, it's piss easy. Yeah? But as long as you know what you're doing. Yeah.
As far as the image kind of rights go, I mean, you mentioned the government, National Assembly. I mean, they insist on having raw files.
They never get raw files. They get, but they insist on copyright.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
It's not ideal, but if you don't agree to it, you can't bid. Yeah, and it's one that we're in the process of actually applying to tender for the matrix, i.e. the grid that allows you in to bid for jobs. Yes. You have to agree to copyright being transferred to them. If you don't agree to that step, you can't do the rest. And I find that I have to just bite that bullet and do it. But there are ways of actually not getting round that. But there are ways of actually capitalising on the fact that you're being paid to go and do this job. You can do something else at the same time, right? So, for instance, I did a job for the National Assembly up in Llandudno 3 months ago. Some sort of conference there. Really boring conference. I mean, really. I mean, also the sell-on value of the pictures is zero. Anyway, no one wants to buy shots of that bloody conference. Believe me, they don't. Right? But they pay me to be there, so I've got opportunities to photograph on the way up, on the way down. I can photograph during the break times that I'm there. So, I mean, I've got loads of stock opportunities. And, when I say, photographing 4 stock libraries is what I can do then on the back of being paid by commission, the Welsh Government to go somewhere for them. So, okay, they're getting the copyright in these boring conference pictures. I've got another bunch of pictures I can sell. Win-win. All right. So there's always a way of actually getting something positive out of the most horrible commission contract requirements. Yeah. You just got to be inventive. Yeah. I mean, and what I do when I do drive to a job, I used to say, okay, it's a 2-hour drive from A to B, when A to B. I'll leave 2 hours, which means you arrive at the job exhausted anyway, and you're going straight into work. And then what I do now, okay, it's a 2-hour drive. I will leave 3.5 hours beforehand, right? That means I can stop for an hour and a half on the way up and do stuff. All right? Yeah. Brilliant. So I've got much more time to do work for myself. Ditto on the way back.
So you're doing an awful lot of planning then, really.
It's not so much planning. It's just that making the most of opportunities that come your way. You haven't got a plan to do. It's just, okay, I'll leave it a bit more time. Yeah. I've got no idea what I'm going to do with that time on that journey. It may be pissing down with rain. I do nothing. Yeah? Or it may be fantastic and I'll stop 6 times. and I'll get something out of that. Even, I mean, I've done stuff like that, and I just, an empty road, for instance, just an empty road, a straight line empty road. Great, that's a conceptual image, right?
Indeed, yes.
The empty road with a cloud at the end of it. Brilliant, yeah. There are things you can do. I mean, I'm with a lot of my stock photography. What I'm trying to make are pictures which are not specifically about anywhere. They are they are genericized images, They are conceptual images. They sell. They're talking about ideas rather than about location. It's not. So it's the idea of an empty road rather than it being the A470 by Trouser van Earth, right?
Indeed.
It's both that. So there may be a market for the A470 by Trouser van Earth. Yeah, so when you caption them a keyword, you have both of them in there. But you're more likely to get a commercial sale from it being deserted road. Yeah. So I'm thinking in both literal terms. This is literally this road in this place, and I'm thinking kind of conceptual terms. This is an abandoned road in the middle of nowhere on a stormy day. Yeah, that kind of thing. But that's book cover stuff, you see. Yeah.
So
the other one's just not.
But you do courses.
Yeah, I do courses.
What sort of courses do you do?
I have recently. I've done a food photography course. What do I know about food photography?
Yes, well, tell me, what do you know about
very little, very little. But it's about transferable skills. I am not a food photographer. I have photographed food, and I know how to make a picture, right? And I know how to operate the bits on my camera to make what I have in my head look what it comes out of on the screen. So food photography is all about the styling and about the lighting and the composition. So it's a skill you can actually bring to food photography from something else.
Yeah.
So I taught that. I'm teaching a workshop in August on portrait photography, which I know a lot more about. So it's a 2-day weekend workshop at the Art Centre here about how to photograph people in various situations, using the architecture of the university campus as the kind of setting for that. Then I also do workshops in stock photography. There's still money to be made from stock photography. Coming to my workshop will hopefully enable people to make fewer mistakes.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Because if you come to stock photography with no idea what stock photography is about, just that your mates say you're a good photographer because you've got some nice pictures of sunsets and some flowers and shit like that on your Facebook page, of which there are millions. So people come to stock photography thinking, my mates at the camera club think I'm brilliant, so therefore my pictures must be able to sell. And then they put them up on a stock photography and they get nothing, no traction, nothing, whatever. Because they're not stock photographers. It's a different way of thinking. Yes. So you come to stock photography workshop and, I will show you what stock photography means. This is what stock photography is. This is what sells. I mean, when I do my stock photography workshop, I have a little video that I show, which is one of my images per second, right? And it's all the pictures I've sold in the last year, right? One per second. Okay. That video lasts 15 minutes. Right. Okay. All right. Cool. Just shows how many pictures I've sold, just from one agency. Yeah. Right. So boom, bam, bam, bam. People get what, So that's banging the message home as what this is the sort of stuff that sells. This stuff that sells. Right. Some of it is easy. Some of it is easy to make, Some of it is a lot more difficult to put together, but it's all doable. And in my case, it's all doable in Aberystwyth.
Yes. Coming back to that, because that's a really interesting point that is it the way of life here that, obviously your family is from here. Yeah. And you went to California, you spent some time there. Mm-hmm. Was there never a desire to move away from here?
No, I toyed with the idea of going to Cardiff. Ooh, I didn't like that. That's a big city. Didn't like that. I lived in London as well for a while. My father was actually born in London from Cardiganshire Welsh stock who went and sold milk.
Right.
I had actually a good story about my dad. He was involved in the great Wandsworth bike stealing scandal.
Right.
Yeah, they used to steal bikes in Wandsworth and sell them back in Llanillow. Yeah. He's to bring them back on the train and flog them into Lewis. My family are a bunch of crooks on my dad's side. Love him, bless him. Anyway, Aberystwyth is brilliant for me. It's a very strange town. It's an unique town. It's a small town. It's only 15,000 people, right? But it has a status and a feeling much bigger than that. Mm-hmm. Partly because of the university and various other cultural institutions who have their headquarters here in the town. So it has this great kind of cosmopolitan feel to it. 9,000 students, 15,000 residents. That kind of throughput of people keeps the place alive, and the economy is buoyant because of that. It's partly because of its relative isolation. It's much more self-sufficient, self-contained, and self-sustaining than a town of a similar size would be if it was nearer a city. Yeah, if this was nearer Cardiff, then it would be a dormitory town. People would sleep here and go and work in Cardiff, right? If it had better transportation links, then people would go away. Yeah, and you'd have all sorts of problems coming in. I mean, if I know that places like Bangor, for instance, had big problems because of the A55. Once the A55 was built, suddenly people were leaving to go to Liverpool or coming in from Liverpool. There's big social problems there. Aber is remarkably isolated geographically. We've got mountains on one side and sea on the other. Because bugger all here. Yeah, fantastic. And I find that I am able to see new things every time I go out there, outside my four walls. And if you're lucky, things happen around you. News stories, like the storms were a big one. The storms were a stupidly massive news story, internationally news story, on my doorstep. Couldn't believe it. That doesn't happen very often. But, when it does happen, you grab it with both hands and fill your boots, he says, mixing his metaphors. Yeah. But if you're clever and know what you're doing, you can find an image which fits a news story somewhere else here. For instance, I've done the National Handstand Day yesterday. So I shot some pictures for that of a guy doing handstands on the tower of the castle. He's a free runner, parker. He likes being dangerous. Did that. I don't think they've been used, but it's worth a spec.
Do you follow all the days? Do you look
some
them
of them? I've got a website, daysoftheyear.com or something similar like that. It's worth a punt,
of course.
Because if you've got nothing else to do, and it's National Handshake Day, well, do a handshake. You may as well. It's going to cost you nothing to do it. Like 2 days ago was National Fairy Day. So I made some pictures of a woman dressed as a fairy with a fairy wand, doing sparkling, stuff around people. Again, I don't think those have been used yet, but now they've gone from news to stock. So maybe next year, in the run up to National Fairy Day, they will sell as a kind of news item, preparing people for Fairy Day. Yeah. So the great thing about doing work with Alamy in particular is that you have two bites of the cherry. You have the initial news bite, and then it goes from news into general stock, and you have the potential for it to be used as a general stock picture.
Yes, and I guess because of the amount of imagery that you have on Alamy, people know about Keith Morris. People. I
hope so. Yeah.
And the quality of work that you do.
Both. They both know of me, and maybe are searching for my pictures at Alamy. But because I'm selling a lot of images at Alamy, their search engine has an algorithm to it which prioritizes images by the best sellers, because they tend to be the better quality images. Right. Yes. So if you're searching for, I don't know, sunset with birds, for instance, and there may be 18,000 pictures of sunsets with birds. Most of the image searches never go beyond the first 2 or 3 pages of that. So if you're in the first 2 or 3 pages, you've got a chance of making a sale. If you're on the bottom page, no way, no chance. All right. So you have to make sure that your images are coming up high in those searches on that particular website, because that's how their algorithm works. Different stock agents have different algorithms for bringing the pictures up, but they all have some sort of way of prioritizing the images that you see, because it's not simply random. So yes, I'm hoping that my track record of sales, plus my ability to actually make the image in the first place, plus my ability to actually caption and keyword it adequately, correctly, interestingly, accurately, all those three things come together. It means that my pictures are coming up high in the search results for any particular query.
We just kind of jump around a little, but we're here for the weekend of the Philip Jones Griffiths exhibition. But just like your take on it, really.
I met Philip Jones Griffiths twice. Once when he was here for the Lens Festival in 2006.
And what were your impressions of him as a man?
Lovely man, yeah, fine. I mean, I met him at the Steddfod in Rhuthun, I think, a couple of years beforehand. Yeah, he seemed a very approachable, very nice man. I mean, I didn't speak to him very much, but yeah, I was very impressed with him as an individual, and obviously very impressed with his body of work. The exhibition here at the National Library at the moment is not, strictly speaking, an exhibition of photography. You know, you're not going there and just having walls of his prints with captions. It's an exhibition which is about a kind of a synopsis of his life. So it's got all sorts of artifacts there, more as well as, if not more than, the pictures. It's a fascinating exhibition. I personally would probably have preferred to see more pictures and less of the size 13 shoes that were there. But then I can see why they're doing that. It's kind of an immersive experience in who Philip Jones Griffiths was, for people who really have no idea, other than maybe one or two iconic pictures, that he ever existed at all. Yeah. So I guess that their kind of target audience are not people like myself who are au fait with him as a magnum photographer, with his work, in Vietnam and beforehand, and post the Vietnam War. It's an interesting show
because he's a photographer that made a difference.
Say again?
He's a photographer that made a difference.
Oh yeah, yes, he did. I mean, as David Wigley said in his opening remarks, his images of the Vietnam conflict, were instrumental in leading to protests on the university campuses of America, which ultimately led to the process of withdrawal of American troops from Vietnam. Yeah, so he's probably one of the few photographers whose images have actually made a tangible difference to world history, which is
something we should be proud of as a nation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Why not?
Indeed.
Yeah,
yes.
I mean, it is something to be proud. But I mean, I don't know why we should be proud of it as a nation. You should be proud of it as humanity.
Yeah.
It's not something that that we as well should be particularly kind of claiming.
No.
I think that's a far too kind of insular approach. I think.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I would agree with you. Yeah, it's the humanity of the man that shines through. I from my point of view, I found it quite an emotional experience, I must admit.
Oh, okay.
Because I think the quote that sort of kind of hit me was that his photography was equivalent to Goya's work, and had that much impact on people. But I found actually that the most emotional photographs for me were the early ones where, as you walk into the exhibition and you see the pictures from Liverpool, and the people going on bus trips and things, and they were they kind of hit me more than anything else, because I'm aware of I'm not aware, I know of, and I've seen the Vietnam Inc. photographs, and they are extraordinary photographs. But his early work actually got to me as well.
I can see why that would have an impact on you, EMYR. I didn't have the same sort of emotional response to that you did.
Are you an emotional person?
Not particularly. No. I'm far too. I know I am not. I mean, I do get emotional about things, but I'm not. No, I don't have that kind of visceral response to situations, and I don't think that he did either. Because if he did, he wouldn't have been able to do the work.
Well, no, actually, because he talks about it. If he wouldn't have been able to take the photographs in Vietnam, especially of children, if he'd had children at that time, and I think that was a very honest response from him as a photographer.
Yeah, I mean, I do think if you are a photographer, which I am not, who photographs in harrowing situations, whether that be a war zone or natural disasters or anything like of that nature, then you do have to not so much isolate, but you have to insulate yourself emotionally from what it is that you're photographing. Because if you allow it to affect you at the time, then you can't make the pictures that you need to make to get the story out, so other people can respond to it. It's. I mean, I'm not that kind of photographer, so I don't know how that works intellectually for people in that situation. But I can sense that you do have to have that kind of sense that this is happening, and I must make this real for other people, rather than simply I must respond to this as a human being here and now to it. So there's you have to distance yourself from what's going on in front of you, be engaged by it, and be committed to the documentation of it. But you can't allow yourself to be completely consumed by it at that time. And I think that's what happens with a lot of photographers, is that they do the work, and then they have some sort of meltdown after, like Don McCullin did. I mean, I think actually Don McCullin's Vietnam pictures are as good, if not better, than Philip John Griffiths's, personally.
Yeah, I had this conversation with somebody not so long ago about McCullin, comparing McCullin and Philip Jones Griffiths, and I kind of. In a way, although they're harrowing photographs by Philip Jones Griffiths, they are kind of a softer imagery than McCullin. McCullin was really gritty, and I think what adds to Philip Jones Griffiths' work is the stuff that he wrote along with the pictures, because those add a little bit extra to it. I think, but that's personally a personal point of view.
Whatever.
Who knows? Whatever, yeah. Again, we're jumping back, Keith, and education and photography. You never trained as a photographer. You taught yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I did art at A level, but photography was not part of the art course. Painting and sculpture was, and I did a bit of lighting design, and then I was trained as an urban planner, geographer, economist. I've kind of learned photography as I've gone along. Back in the day when I first started, it was all on film, which meant that every single frame you shot was costing you money. So you had to be aware of that. Also in those days, I wasn't making much money from photography, so the balance there was even more crucial than it is now. So the ability to actually self-educate in photography was important to me, through looking at as much photography as I possibly could. Also, in a sense, in those days, although we now think of the internet as being a massive repository of imagery, there was actually a lot of pictures being published, in the magazines. The Sunday Times magazine, the Observer magazine, but they were stuffed full of really good documentary photography, and that's gone. So it was possible to actually expose yourself to a lot of really powerful photography at that stage. I don't think you need to go to a college or a university to study photography to become a photographer. I suspect that one of the benefits of so doing is not so much the hard skills, but the soft skills. It's the networking skills or the exposure to potential networks that are advantageous to you if you take advantage of them. Because the hard skills, how to operate the camera, how to make a picture, there are any number of resources now available to a person. Whatever camera you've got, whatever lens you've got, whatever flash gun you've got, whatever bit of kit you've got, there will be tutorials for that on YouTube. Any question you could possibly think about for the most obscure piece of kit that you have, there will be an expert there who will guide you through it. Yeah. You don't need to be in a classroom to be told how to use a 24 tilt shift lens. Because you can get, So I don't know how worthwhile it would be to spend now $9,000 a year, 30 grand over 3 years to learn to be a photographer, especially when the average income for a photographer is £24,000, not exactly riches beyond the dreams of avarice. I really think that you would be better off spending that £30,000 in doing something self-motivating, self-training, building up a really strong portfolio of your own images, stuff that you've actually thought about yourself, stuff that you've created in collaboration with people. And then use that then as a way of getting an in to potential clients. Because there are no jobs, as we said before, there are no jobs anymore in photography, but there are opportunities. And opportunities will go to the people who've got the abilities to actually exploit those opportunities. You have to have this stuff, the gift of the gob, yeah? You have to be able to speak about your work.
Well, let's be plain then. Do you think that young people are being sold a pop?
I think that education in general is become far too commercialised and far too monetarised. Institutions now, whether it be colleges or universities or even schools, are getting paid per head. So they want you in there, basically, and they don't want you leaving at all. But once you're in, they'll bend over backwards to keep you in that institution because they know they can get X tens of thousands of pounds because you're there, because your body is physically in that building. They will get money. Right? I don't particularly think that the benefits of that education are that tangible. I really strongly believe that a photographer should have an education, just not in photography. I think you should be doing it in something else, something which actually informs you about society. Yeah. I personally believe that a degree in economics and geography is the ideal background for a photographer. But then I am slightly biased. But any degree which makes you think, any degree which actually makes you think about what you're seeing, makes you think about what you're doing, makes you think about what you're saying, is good. Yeah. Right? Yeah. You can then translate that ability into making images which are about what you see, what you think, and what you say. Yeah, that's the easy part. It's the thinking, seeing, and saying is the hard part. So learn how to do that. Yeah. Doing something else. Do philosophy. Do mathematics. Yeah. Do anything, but don't do photography. Do something which actually is really good, and then do the photography. It's easy. It's so easy to learn to be. To learn to make pictures. So the kit now, will do it for you just about. You can't make a bad picture anymore. When I started off, I was using a Russian Zenit E camera.
Yes, and a beautiful thing.
50mm then.
Helios lens.
Yeah, built like a frigging tank.
Yeah.
You could hit people on the heads with it, and they wouldn't break. Well, the heads would break, but the camera would be fine. Yeah. Fantastic bits of metal and glass, but you had to learn to use them. Yeah. These days, I've got Nikon D4s. When I first got Nikon D4, and I do a lot of theatre work, and I normally have to shoot a lot of theatre to get a reasonable number of successful images.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
With the D4, I'm struggling to find bad pictures. I'm struggling to delete stuff from the shoots that I do because they're all bloody in focus. They're all in focus. They're all properly exposed. I'm like, oh, give us a break, I need to get rid of half these pictures, but they all, they're good. So if the kit these days makes it difficult to be a bad photographer, and the kit is incredibly cheap. It's never been cheaper to be a photographer than it is now. And when I started off, okay, the cameras were cheap-ish. A camera would cost, say, £500, right? Take a figure out from the sky. And over the life of that camera, so 2, 3, 4 years on that camera, I would probably spend through £5,000-6,000 on film and paper.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Nowadays, a top-end camera is £4,000. Top-end camera, £4,000. Yeah? And then no outlay.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's a no-brainer. It's never been cheaper to buy absolutely the top-end kit and be a photographer. You don't even need that top-end kit to be a photographer. All right. So you can get the equipment you need. You can get the tutorials you need. You don't really, I don't think you need to be educated by other photographers in that kind of institutional environment. Educate yourself, autodidact. Brilliant. Be an autodidact. Teach yourself. Because that's the only way you're going to develop any kind of individuality about what you do. I mean, I go to exhibitions, degree show exhibitions. I think, and I go, and it's always the triumph of hope over experience. I go there thinking, please God, this is going to be good. This is going to be good. I go and I come back and I go, for Christ's sakes, it's tedious stuff. Yeah. It's often very badly, technically very bad. Yeah. And conceptually, just nothing there.
Nowhere. Yeah.
Nothing there at all.
Yeah.
If you think, what have you done? What have you done in 3 years at this institution that you're producing this as your degree show?
Yes.
I think, well, you could have saved yourself £30,000, travelled the world for 3 years, and come back with better experiences than that.
I just want to pick up on one little thing. You did art at.
I did economics, geography, English law, and art.
Right. Okay. Do you still do art?
What, in terms of like painting art? No.
Do you draw?
No. I photograph.
You photograph.
I photograph because I can't paint or draw. Yeah. And like I say, I'm really unsure about defining myself as an artist. I don't call myself an artist. I never have called myself an artist. I'm a photographer. I'm a photographer. Yeah. Well, if other people say that is kind of art, fine. But I don't see myself in that stream. Like I'm a jobbing photographer. I go and do stuff for people.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Keith.
You're welcome. Cross the mode.